In 1983, a 9-year-old boy in Columbus, Ohio, came home to an empty house every afternoon. He let himself in with a key tied around his neck, dropped his backpack on the lino floor, and turned on the television. His mother worked a double shift. His father worked a second job. The kitchen had bread. It had condiments. It had whatever was left. That was the plan. Number 19 on this list cost less than 15 cents, and every kid within 3 blocks knew how to make it without being taught. Number 11 was so filling that teachers across the country noticed these children falling asleep at their desks by 2 in the afternoon, and nobody connected it to what they had eaten alone at 3:45 the day before. And number 4 was not really a snack at all. It was a declaration. It was a 9-year-old standing in a kitchen with no adults present, deciding that the rules of mealtime no longer applied. Some of these will make you laugh, some will make you wince, and a few will put you right back on that carpet, television, on house, quiet, completely alone and completely in charge. Hit that subscribe button. Let us count down the 25 forgotten 1980s poor man snacks that Latchkey kids ate watching TV alone. These were not recipes. Nobody wrote them down. Nobody taught them. They were solutions arrived at independently by millions of American children who came home to empty houses during one of the most quietly difficult decades this country ever produced. The 1980s economy squeezed working families from both ends. Mothers entered the workforce in numbers the country had never seen before. Fathers worked longer hours or worked 2 jobs or were not there at all. And the children, somewhere between 7 and 12 years old, became the generation that raised itself. They were called Latchkey kids. The key was real. It hung on a string around the neck, under the shirt, warm from body heat by the time the school bus pulled away. They let themselves in. They locked the door behind them. They turned on the television, and then they stood in the kitchen and figured out what there was to eat. If you grew up in that house, in that decade, in that particular silence, you already know what is on this list. Number 25, the butter and sugar sandwich. Wonder Bread was 69 cents a loaf in 1982, and it was in almost every kitchen in America. You took 2 slices, spread butter across one side, and shook sugar over the top from whatever container was on the counter. White granulated sugar, the kind that came in the 5-pound bag that lasted a month. You pressed the 2 slices together and ate it standing at the counter or sitting cross-legged on the carpet in front of the television. Your mother called it a treat. The grocery store called it the white bread special. You called it dinner. Number 24, the ketchup sandwich. There was always a bottle of Heinz in the door of the refrigerator. Always. It was the one condiment that never ran out because somebody always bought another one before the last one was empty. You took 2 slices of bread, squeezed ketchup across one slice in whatever pattern you felt like that afternoon, pressed the other slice on top, and that was it. No heating, no preparation, 30 seconds from cabinet to carpet. There was no recipe. There was just the bottle and the bread and the silence of an empty kitchen. Number 23, saltine crackers with peanut butter. A jar of peanut butter cost around $1.19 for 18 ounces in 1984, and it lasted longer than almost anything else in the cabinet. You opened the sleeve of Nabisco saltines, laid them out in a row on the counter or directly on the carpet next to you, and spread peanut butter across each one with a butter knife or your finger or whatever was closest. The saltine gave you the crunch. The peanut butter gave you something that felt almost like a meal. 9 crackers was the standard serving. Nobody told you that. You just knew. Number 22, dry cereal from the box. Not the name brand cereal with the cartoon characters on the front. The generic store brand cereal that came in the plain box with the simple lettering, the one that cost 79 cents at the grocery store while the other one cost twice that. You carried the box to the living room, sat down in front of whatever was on TBS that afternoon, and ate it by the handful directly from the opening. No bowl, no milk, no spoon. The box said breakfast. You said it was whatever you needed it to be. Number 21, frozen peas straight from the bag. You opened the freezer and there they were. A bag of frozen peas, stiff and cold, the individual peas rattling against each other like small green marbles. You did not cook them. You did not even consider cooking them. You pulled the bag open, took a handful, and went back to the living room where Scooby-Doo was still running on the television and the afternoon was still 3 hours from being over. They were cold and they were there. That was enough. Number 20, the mayonnaise sandwich. Hellman's was the jar in the refrigerator door if you lived east of the Rockies. It was always there. It was the thing that never fully ran out because there was always just enough left to scrape the sides with a knife and get one more use out of it. You took 2 slices of bread, spread mayonnaise across both sides thick enough to see it, pressed them together, and ate it in 4 bites standing at the kitchen counter with the refrigerator still open behind you. A kid of 8 could make it in 30 seconds without dirtying a single dish. Nobody called it lunch. Nobody called it anything. It was just the thing you made when everything else was gone. Number 19, the mustard sandwich. A bottle of French's yellow mustard cost around 59 cents in 1983, which meant it was always in the cabinet, even in the weeks when money was genuinely short. You pulled 2 slices from the bag, squeezed a line of mustard across one slice, pressed the other on top, and that was the entire operation. The total cost of that sandwich was under 15 cents. You made it yourself, you ate it on the carpet in front of the television, and nobody said a word about nutrition. Number 18, margarine and jelly. Butter was expensive, margarine was not. Bluebonnet and Imperial lined the dairy cases in every grocery store in America through the 70s and 80s, marketed as the smarter, cheaper choice for families watching what they spent. You spread margarine across the bread first, the way your mother did, because that was the order you had seen it done. Then the jelly, whatever flavor was in the jar, grape most of the time, or strawberry if it was a good week. The margarine made the bread soft in a way that felt almost luxurious. The jelly made it feel like something your mother had made for you. She had not. You had made it yourself. That was the difference that nobody talked about. Number 17, a single slice of American cheese on plain bread. Kraft singles had been in American refrigerators since 1965, each slice wrapped individually in its own thin plastic sleeve. You peeled the plastic back, laid the cheese flat on one slice of bread, folded the bread over once, and ate it cold, untoasted, exactly as it was. No pan, no heat, no effort beyond opening the wrapper. Kraft called it a cheese product. You called it lunch. The distinction did not matter at 3:45 in the afternoon when the wood-paneled walls of the living room were the only company you had. Number 16, pickle slices on crackers. There was almost always a jar of Vlasic dill pickles somewhere in the refrigerator, pushed to the back behind the mustard and the leftover containers. You fished out 4 or 5 slices with your fingers, laid them across a row of Ritz crackers or saltines on the counter, and ate them one at a time while Wheel of Fortune ran on the television in the next room. The brine from the pickles soaked into the cracker just enough before you ate it. Sharp and salty and cold. It tasted like something, which was the whole point. Stop the countdown for a moment. In the early 1980s, something changed in the American kitchen. Not the food itself, the story around the food. Frito-Lay, Nabisco, General Mills, the companies that made the bags and the boxes, had discovered something useful about Saturday morning television. Children were watching it alone, millions of them, in living rooms across the country, sitting exactly where you sat, in front of exactly the kind of television you watched. And the commercial breaks between the cartoons were not accidents. They were investments. 30 seconds of color and music and a child on screen holding something in a bag, something that crinkled, something that came sealed and bright and ready, something that cost 99 cents in 1985 while a butter sandwich cost less than 10 cents. The message was not spoken out loud. It did not need to be. It arrived the same way every Saturday morning between He-Man and Transformers, patient and consistent, and aimed directly at the child sitting alone on the carpet. The message was simple. What you are eating is not enough. What you need comes in a bag. By the end of the decade, the snack food industry had reshaped what an entire generation believed a snack was supposed to be. The things these children already knew how to make. The things sitting in the cabinet and the refrigerator door, the things that cost nothing and required nothing but a pair of hands, those things did not have commercials. They did not have mascots. They did not have jingles. They needed you to forget them. You almost did. Number 15, the bread and butter pickle sandwich. Your mother kept a jar of bread and butter pickles in the refrigerator because they lasted forever and they cost almost nothing, and they made plain things taste like something. You took 2 slices of bread, spread mayonnaise across one side, laid 4 or 5 pickle slices down in a row, pressed the bread together, and cut it in half if you felt like doing the extra step. The pickles were sweet and the mayonnaise was cold and the bread was soft, and the whole thing took 90 seconds to make. There was a handwritten note from your mother on the counter that said, "Be home by 6 and do your homework." You read it and went to the living room and turned on the A-Team. Number 14, the potato chip sandwich. Lay's potato chips were the most recognizable bag in the grocery store, and if there was a partial bag left on top of the refrigerator or in the cabinet above the stove, you used it. You opened 2 slices of bread, laid a single layer of chips across one slice, then pressed the other slice down hard and flat with your palm so the chips would not slide out when you picked it up. You had to press firmly, you had to commit. The chips shattered into smaller pieces under the bread and packed together into something that held its shape for exactly as long as it needed to. You pressed the bread down hard so the chips would not fall out. That was the engineering. That was the science of being 8 years old and hungry. Number 13, canned soup, cold from the can. A can of Campbell's condensed soup cost between 35 and 45 cents in 1983. The instructions said to add water and heat it on the stove. You did not always do that. Sometimes there was not time, or the stove felt like too many steps, or you were 9 years old and your little brother was 6 and you were in charge and neither of you wanted to wait. You opened the can with the hand crank opener mounted on the wall, found a spoon in the drawer, and ate it straight from the can, cold and thick and undiluted, standing at the counter while Magnum P.I. played in the other room. It tasted different cold, denser, more serious, like something you ate because you meant to, not because someone had prepared it for you. Number 12, sugar water, not Kool-Aid. Kool-Aid required a packet and the right amount of sugar and someone who had thought ahead. This required nothing except a glass and the tap and the sugar bowl on the counter. You filled the glass with cold water, spooned in 2 or 3 heaping spoons of sugar, stirred it with whatever was in the dish rack, and drank it standing at the sink. There was no recipe for sugar water. You did not need one. You needed 3 minutes in a glass. Number 11, cornstarch pudding. This one required the stove, which meant you were old enough to use it or brave enough to try. You opened the cabinet and found the box of cornstarch, the bag of sugar, the vanilla extract your mother kept on the second shelf. You measured cornstarch and sugar into a pot, added milk slowly, and stood at the stove stirring it without stopping, because if you stopped it seized and went lumpy and you had to start over. The Tupperware containers were stacked on the counter next to the rotary phone. The note from your mother was still on the counter. You stirred that pot for 12 minutes without putting the spoon down. You were 10 years old. You were cooking dinner. Number 10, the bologna sandwich with a single slice. Oscar Mayer bologna came in a 12-ounce package for around $1.29 in 1984. And if there was a package in the refrigerator, it meant someone had bought it recently and it had to last. You took 1 slice, not 2, 1. You laid it on a single piece of bread and folded the bread in half around it so the bologna sat in the crease like it was being held. You folded the bread in half so it looked like more. That was the trick. That was the whole trick. If your little brother was watching you make it, he got one too, and you told him it was plenty, and you both sat on the floor in front of different strokes and ate it in 6 bites and did not talk about whether it was enough. Number 9, peanut butter and banana. Bananas cost around 29 cents a pound in the 1980s, which made them the cheapest fresh fruit in the grocery store by a significant distance. You peeled one, sliced it directly onto the bread with a butter knife in uneven rounds, spread peanut butter across the other slice as thick as you could justify, and pressed the 2 halves together. The banana went soft against the peanut butter almost immediately. The 2 things became one thing. It was the most complete meal on this entire list, though nobody told you that. The peanut butter had protein. The banana had calories and potassium. Your body knew what it needed even when your mind was only thinking about getting back to the television before the next segment started. Number 8, brown sugar cinnamon toast from the toaster. You did not need the oven. The toaster sat on the counter next to the bread box, and it was the one appliance a child could operate without anyone worrying. You put 2 slices of bread in, waited for them to pop, spread butter across the surface while they were still hot enough to melt it, then pressed brown sugar and a shake of cinnamon into the butter with the back of the spoon until it formed a rough paste across the surface. The sugar melted slightly into the butter and the cinnamon spread unevenly, and the whole thing smelled like something your grandmother would have made on a Sunday. You ate it on the carpet with family ties on the television and the key still around your neck, and the note on the fridge that said home by 6. Number 7, condensed milk on bread. Eagle brand sweetened condensed milk had been in American kitchens since the 19th century, thick and white and sweet in a way that regular milk never was. You opened the can with the hand punch your mother kept in the drawer, made 2 small holes on opposite sides of the lid, tilted it over a slice of bread, and let it pour slow and heavy across the surface. It did not spread the way butter did. It pooled in the low parts of the bread and ran toward the crust, and you tilted the slice to keep it from dripping onto your hand. It was sugar and fat, and it was the closest thing to dessert that existed in a kitchen with nothing left in it. You ate it in 2 bites and licked the condensed milk off the back of your hand and did not feel poor. You felt like you had found something. Number 6, dry ramen crushed in the bag. Maruchan and Nissin ramen packets sold for 10 to 15 cents each in the 1980s, which meant a box of them sat in the cabinet of almost every working class kitchen in America as a matter of financial common sense. The package said to boil them in water for 3 minutes. You said you did not have time. You picked up the sealed package and crushed it in both hands against the counter until the brick of noodles broke into rough pieces inside the bag. You tore the corner open, poured the seasoning powder in, shook the bag to coat everything, and ate it standing over the sink with your fingers, the dry noodles, sharp at the edges and salty from the powder, and oddly satisfying in a way that made no sense until you had finished the whole bag. It was the best thing you had eaten all week. You did not know why. You did not need to know why. Stop the countdown one more time. There is something that the nutritionists of the 1980s did not say out loud because the language of the decade did not have room for it. They looked at what these children were eating and they saw deficiency. They saw poor choices. They saw the absence of vegetables and the presence of sugar and sodium, and they wrote it down in reports that nobody read. What they did not write down was this: 2 tablespoons of peanut butter contain around 8 grams of protein. That is more protein than a glass of milk. A banana contains potassium and carbohydrates and enough calories to carry a small body through 3 hours of an empty afternoon without collapsing. A packet of ramen, eaten dry or boiled, contains around 200 calories, which is exactly what a child who walked 6 blocks home from school and has not eaten since 11 in the morning actually needs at 3:45 in the afternoon. These children were not eating poorly. They were eating with the materials available to them, and their bodies were doing exactly what bodies are designed to do, which is convert whatever is offered into energy and keep moving. The mothers who stocked those cabinets were not failing. They were operating under constraints that the reports never accounted for and the commercials never acknowledged. A jar of peanut butter that cost $1.19 lasted 2 weeks. A bag of branded chips that cost 99 cents lasted 1 afternoon. The mothers knew the difference. The children figured it out on their own. She was not making do. She was ahead of her time. Number 5, the off-brand toaster pastry eaten cold from the wrapper. Kellogg's Pop-Tarts had been on grocery store shelves since 1964, but the name brand box cost more than most Latchkey households could justify spending on something a child ate alone in the afternoon. The store brand version came in a plain box with simple lettering and cost significantly less and tasted close enough that the difference only mattered to children who had eaten the real thing at a friend's house and knew what they were missing. You pulled one from the foil sleeve without toasting it. The instructions said to toast it. You did not toast it. The filling was stiff and cold, and the pastry shell was dry and slightly waxy, and you ate it in 4 bites sitting on the floor with the key still around your neck and MTV running on the television because MTV had launched in 1981, and if your house had cable, you watched it every afternoon without understanding half of what you were seeing. You ate the second one too, because they came in pairs and there was no reason not to. Nobody was counting. Number 4, the mayonnaise and pickle sandwich. This is the one that cost 15 cents. 2 cents for the pickle slices fished from the plastic jar in the back of the refrigerator. 5 cents for the mayonnaise spread across one slice of bread. 8 cents for the 2 slices of Wonder Bread pulled from the bag on the counter. You laid the pickle slices down in a single row across the mayonnaise, pressed the bread together, and cut it in half if you felt like it, and did not if you did not. The cold of the pickles came through the bread. The mayonnaise held everything in place. It tasted like something a person had made with intention, which was the most important quality a snack could have when you were 9 years old and the house was quiet and the note on the fridge said home by 6 and it was currently 4:15. 15 cents. That was the meal. That was the whole meal. And you ate it on the floor in front of the television because the kitchen table felt too formal for a Tuesday afternoon with nobody home. Number 3, Kool-Aid with extra sugar. A single packet of Kool-Aid cost around 5 cents in 1983. Kraft Foods had been making it since 1927, and it had been the drink of children in tight households for longer than most of their parents had been alive. The instructions on the packet said 1 cup of sugar per 2 quarts of water. You used more. You always used more because the sugar was the point, because the sweetness was the part that felt like abundance, like something extra, like a small deliberate excess in an afternoon that did not have many of those. You stirred it in a pitcher or a large cup or whatever container was clean in the dish rack, and you poured a glass and took it back to the living room and drank it slow because slow made it last longer, and you knew that without being told. Number 2, cornbread crumbled in milk. This one came from somewhere older than the 1980s. It came from the South and from Appalachia and from every part of America where food was stretched across more people than it was meant to feed, and nothing was wasted because nothing could be. You took the cornbread that was left from the night before, the pieces that had gone slightly dry at the edges, and you crumbled them into a glass or a bowl and poured cold milk over the top until the cornbread softened and the milk turned faintly yellow, and the whole thing became something you ate with a spoon, slowly, the way you ate things that were meant to last. Your grandmother learned it from her grandmother. You learned it from the bottom of the bread bag and the last of the milk. The chain held. Number 1, 2 slices of bread with nothing in between. This is not a recipe. There are no ingredients to list, no price to calculate, no brand name to mention. There were just 2 slices of Wonder Bread pulled from the bag on the counter, and there was nothing left to put between them. The peanut butter jar was empty and scraped clean. The mustard bottle had been turned upside down and nothing more would come out. The ketchup was gone. The pickles were gone. The margarine had been used down to a thin film on the sides of the tub that was not worth trying to spread. You opened every cabinet. You checked the back of the refrigerator shelf. You stood in the kitchen for a moment that was longer than it should have been for a child that age, taking inventory of a situation that adults were supposed to manage and that no one had managed today. Then you took 2 slices of bread. You pressed them together without anything between them. The bread was soft and it compressed under your hands and it tasted like bread, which tasted like nothing, which was what there was. You folded it in half the way you had seen done with other sandwiches, the ones that had things inside them, because folding it made it feel more like a real thing and less like what it actually was. You took it to the living room. You sat down on the carpet. The television was on. You do not remember what was playing. It did not matter what was playing. The television was company, and the bread was dinner, and the house was quiet in the specific way that a house is quiet when the people who are supposed to be in it are not there yet. You did not call it a snack. You did not call it anything. You sat on the floor, you watched the television, you ate the bread, and you waited for the sound of a key in the lock. That sound was the whole meal. That sound was everything. These were not poor snacks. That is the wrong way to see them. Poor is a word that describes a condition from the outside, from a distance, from somewhere comfortable enough to make comparisons. The children who made these things were not thinking about poverty. They were thinking about the next 30 minutes. They were thinking about whether the bread was still soft enough, or whether the peanut butter would stretch to the end of the week, or whether their little brother would eat the pickle sandwich without complaining. They were solving problems that no one had assigned them, and managing households that were not yet theirs to manage, and doing it quietly every afternoon in living rooms across Ohio and Georgia and New Jersey and everywhere else that working families lived in that decade, and tried to hold things together with what they had. This was the generation that raised itself. Not because it wanted to, because that was what the afternoon required. Here is my challenge to you. Make one of these this week. Not because you have to, because you want to remember what it felt like to need nothing more than what was already in the cabinet. Sit on the floor, turn on the television, eat it slowly, and then tell me in the comments which one you made, or tell me the one that is not on this list, the one that was yours specifically, the one that nobody else would understand unless they grew up in the same kind of house in the same kind of decade. Those stories belong here. Leave them below. This knowledge was never written down. It was carried. And the only way it survives is if you say it out loud.